Good afternoon to everybody. So I think we can start. Welcome to our session on artificial intelligence and antitrust compliance. First of all, I would like to introduce the panelists of this session. Paola Roberta Sfasciotti, officer at the Italian Competition Authority. Ilan Sher, Executive Director of Ascension, and Domenico Gullo, partner at DLA PIPER. So, welcome, and I hope that you enjoy the discussion. As antitrust lawyers, we have been dealing in the last years with the question, are algorithms and artificial intelligence a threat to competition? Do they increase the risk of collusion or of abuse of market power? In this session, we will focus on a different topic, which is, can artificial intelligence help antitrust compliance and how? What are the opportunities and the challenges for businesses and enforcers? And what is, in this scenario, the role of lawyers, if any? Artificial intelligence is not only the future, it is the present. Tools powered by AI technologies are ready for use in a number of areas. Compliance is one of them. If we look at the past, we see that tools have been created and developed for screening activities. This is the case, for instance, of cartel screening tools that have been used for identifying whether cartel may exist in certain market and who may be involved in the cartel. The traditional screening tools are empirical methods that commonly use data gathered at market level or at firm level, such as prices, bids, volumes, market share, and so on, to identify the presence of elements that suggest that a cartel is ongoing or it is likely to form. And basically, there are two main types of screens, the structural screens and behavioral screens. Structural screens aim to identify markets that, due to their structure, show a higher propension to collusion. So basically, the exercise that this type of screens make possible is to flag the markets where a cartel is more likely to occur. Behavioral screens instead focus not on the industry, but on firms' activities, and aim at detecting anomalous elements, suspicious patterns that might suggest the presence of a cartel. Structural screens are traditionally considered more relevant for enforcement activities by authority to support the selection of cases to pick and the opening of investigation, while behavioral screens are considered more relevant for businesses because they are able to flag specific firms' behavior at risk and allow the firm to take appropriate remedies. Behavioral screens can be used both by businesses which are or may be victims of cartels, helping their procurement activities or helping them preparing legal actions. But they can also be used by businesses which are part of a cartel or are potentially part of a cartel as a component of their compliance programs or for investigation purposes. Detection of cartel or something that looks like a cartel at an early stage provides, as you know, benefits for the businesses, which include the possibility for the company to immediately stop the behavior and change the conducts, the organizations, the people if necessary, and to take legal steps, which may include, when appropriate, rushing for leniency and try to gain immunity. But now we entered a new phase where more sophisticated technologies, machine learning technologies allow for more efficient, less expensive, and more effective tool and application. Think of the traditional way that we know to design and conduct antitrust compliance program, mapping, risk assessment, gap analysis, remedies, proposed actions, and traditionally, how you do it, review of documents, personal interviews, training, and so on. But honestly, I think we all know that massive reviews of documents and massive interviewing activities are in most cases not really feasible in practice within compliance program because they are too invasive, they are too time-consuming, and they are too expensive. And even if you manage to get it done, then you have to monitor. As the authorities remind us, monitoring is a key factor for a compliance program to be effective, or at least to be considered effective. But now think that you get available tech tools that allow for screening behaviors, processing massive amounts of data, and connecting the dots much faster and potentially much better than manual human activists can do. Tech tools have been actually created and trained to do that. And the more they do this exercise, the better they become at performing their tasks. Much more is yet to come, of course, but what you already have on the shelf is relevant and is worth to be considered. So what we should expect? We will talk in this session with Ilan, who has led a project for the use of AI tools for antitrust compliance. He will tell us about using AI to spot cartels, what types of AI tools are available and how they can be trained, how these tools can be used and for what purposes. And then Paula will give a view from the angle of enforcers on AI tools for company antitrust compliance and on the use of AI tools by antitrust authority. And last but not least, Domenico Gullo will deal with the question: in this tech environment, are lawyers an endangered species, or do they still have a role? So now I leave the floor to Ilan, and please free to ask questions if you have. Ilan.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And very nice to be here in Rome. Good to see all of you. And very nice to speak just at 3:20 in the afternoon, which is the point of the day where everybody is digesting their lunch and most likely to be sleepy. So I've been asked to wake you all up. So the problem that we had in DLA PIPER and among most law firms and businesses back in the late teens, sort of 2015 and onwards, was a problem that had been growing for a long while. How do you spot cartel activity? It was always a problem, but over the past 20 years, data has expanded massively. I don't know whether you're aware of Moore's law. So there's a law in data analysis which says that every 2 years, data doubles, so the volume of data doubles. So the volume of data that was created in the last 5 years is greater than the volume of data created and saved over the entire history of the world coming up to that period. So a massive growth of data over the last 20 years has made the ability for us to do our jobs much harder. A lot of skills and capabilities have been developed to make that easier for lawyers, but what we find now over the last 15 to 20 years is that when we are doing large investigations, the time cost to find problematic material within organizations is hard. The other big change that happened was happened at a regulatory level. The Goldman Sachs Prismin case was the loudest example of this, but there was a belief among regulators that a large number of businesses that had been involved in cartel activity were private equity owned. There was no understanding of why. It could be that the pursuit of EBITDA made businesses cut too far into their compliance budget, or possibly that the pursuit of EBITDA made people cut corners in relation to profitability. But the result was a number of private equity organizations were being fined as a group, and a number of which had always been possible under the competition legislation. But if you're Goldman Sachs in the Prismin case and you are facing a 10% of group worldwide turnover as a result of the behavior of one portfolio entity, you have boards that are now looking at how do we deal with this issue. But they turned around to their lawyers and said, with our investments as private equity owners, how do we find cartels? Our involvement in these businesses is as a director on a board. We are not involved in the day-to-day management of these businesses. And there have been a number of cases where very small businesses or small businesses that are part of a portfolio entity or that are part of a large conglomerate, but they're just a small sub-entity as part of that, are holding the entire group of companies to account. And from a fines perspective, that's very bad, but also from a compliance perspective, and acting for these businesses, their goal is to be compliant. They are being caught out. But how do you spot a cartel? And we found, as you can see on the slide, spotting cartels is hard. They're concealed. Any level of the organization can be involved in the cartel. And from we saw that in the Mercedes-Benz case, a junior sales manager, a regional sales manager, that's the lowest level of a sales manager, held the entire of Mercedes-Benz to account. And then in the T-Mobile case, a single one-off event was sufficient to amount to cartel activity. So we are finding ourselves with businesses that have a very high level of risk in relation to cartel activity from anywhere within their organization, at a time where it's much harder to find that information because of the volume of data, and at the same time, an inability to find it themselves. There are things that we do already. So Alessandro talked about compliance programs that are in place, and these, I won't go into much further detail, but so we have training, policies and guidance, and whistleblowing techniques. But as we know, the majority of cases that we find where there is cartel conduct don't come up as a result of that. Ciao. But there are abilities to run investigations and audits, but as we know, these are costly. So the only times when we do run these investigations and audits is usually when the issue is so big that it can justify such a big expense, or when the regulator is already knocking at the door. We call this the burning platform. And when you have a burning platform, you can justify the cost of an expense because you're facing huge fines. If only there was another way. And we at DLA PIPER looked at tools that could be used to help spot these issues, and we have pre-trained an artificial intelligence to spot cartels, and just recently also bribery. These are other risks, compliance risks that businesses face. What we did is over a long period, we got all of the examples of every single case within the European Union that had been published, as well as cases that we had across the DLA network, and we use that to train a neural net artificial intelligence to spot to spot cartel risks within documents, and the ability to do that allows us to throw the AI cold against any data set and spot the cartel risks within that. And the way it does that is it ranks the risk of signals of cartel behavior within a very large data set, and that allows lawyers to then review the output of the AI, the high-risk documents, for the ability, for the level of cartel risk. We don't see this as replacing lawyers, and I don't want to steal any thunder from what Domenico is going to talk about later. This is not an AI process where the AI is making decisions. This is an AI process where the AI is ranking risk. And then we look at the high level of risks. And if that high level of risk still is producing relevant information, you can then look deeper into the information that you find. I'm short of time, but if you have any questions, I can talk about the different types of cartels that we've trained it to spot. I'll talk about the effectiveness of this methodology, but essentially we had a big data problem. This explosion of data made it very hard for us to look within an organization to find problems, but this is a big data solution that allows us to then go into that data and find the things that we're looking at quickly and effectively without wasting huge amounts of time and cost and expenses. This is obviously relevant for the cases where there is an investigation, where you know that there is a risk within your organization and you would like to find the problematic risks quickly. So in an investigation, we can use an AI to spot those problematic areas as quickly as possible, the behavioral risks within the organization, and that can change your strategy so that you can respond quicker and easier, and you can design a leniency or an immunity application. But for me, that's too late. So really the critical issue that we had for these private equity and conglomerate businesses was, what can we do beforehand? And if you can remove 90% of the costs of running these reviews, which is what we've done by pre-training an AI, we can then run proactive and preventative compliance within an organization to spot those issues. Equally, when you're buying or selling businesses, you can run that against the businesses that you're buying in due diligence, or most likely post-acquisition due diligence, to check whether there are any issues there and whether you are inheriting risk. And if you can do that early, you can obviously deal with that risk. As we all know, finding a problem beforehand, you have a lot of possible solutions. And it's not just immunity. You can use public distancing. You can put the behavior to an end. You can deal with any employees, or you could even prevent a problem from becoming a cartel if you can spot it early enough. So all of these tools from a preventative angle change the way that we deal with compliance. The test that Alessandro mentioned before is we need to have effective compliance within our organizations. We see this from the EU guidance and also from in the UK from the national guidance that we have as well. This is a subjective test. So obviously the size of your organization and the level of review that you need to conduct will change depending on the cost implications of what's required and also the level of risk that you have, but also in the level of technology that's available. So as these technologies become available, presumably it is going to be more incumbent on businesses to take the necessary steps. Just very quickly, by using a pre-trained AI as opposed to machine learning or technology-assisted review, we changed the dynamics of the way we were able to respond to cases. In one case, within 10 minutes of us starting our review of 80,000 documents, we had a smoking gun cartel document. This one was a data set that we knew was there. In another case, we did a comparison where the original team used existing methodologies, conventional methodologies like technology-assisted review, predictive coding, continuous active learning, and they found 30 issues in the document. We outperformed them, so we're using AI plus lawyers to review that output, so we aren't losing lawyers from the mix, but we found more issues, more documents than they did. In the bribery context, we actually found a fifth of the documents more than they did, but we're doing that in a fraction of the time, a tenth of the time, and as a result, a tenth of the cost, so we're able to massively reduce the capability. We have another good example. We had a case where an ex-employee had actually been involved in a cartel, and he called up his employers, and if they refused to settle with him, he would go to the authorities and and talk about the cartels that he was involved in. So he was effectively blackmailing the business. Because he had left, they couldn't interrogate and find the information, so they wanted to run a review. So he had 5 years of data from three employees, so over 70 gigabytes of data. And we initially had quotes that would have taken just over 2,000 fee earner hours to run a review to check whether there was an issue there. We did the entire review in 55 hours, and the results of that were taken to the authority, and they were able to get full immunity from any fines or action as a result. So they were able to deal with the blackmail threat very timely, but equally they were able to do that in a cost-effective way. Obviously, this is very useful for businesses and private practice, but equally we do see a role for regulators of being able to use the same technology within a dawn raid to speed up their ability to run a review within a very short time frame. It will help businesses being raided because the raids should be able to not take 5-10 days to complete, and business and regulators could be in and out there much quicker. But it does also create problems for regulators and for business. So these, by using AI tools in this way, would this be a fishing expedition? What are the powers of the regulators to search and seize? But there are other benefits equally for the speed of investigation. So we saw, I think, was it last week, the European Commission ran an investigation within 2 years. That is not the norm. These investigations hang over businesses for 5 years, which is bad for business. It sits on the audited accounts for a long period of time. So we do see benefits both for business and for regulators in speeding that up, freeing up the resources of the regulator to be more effective in their enforcement, but also better for businesses to get decisions quicker. I think that's it for my time, but maybe later, if we have time, I can talk about the AI capabilities, the tools that we've been using.
Thank you, Ilan. So, conscious of time, I leave the floor to Paola, who will give the view on the side of the enforcer, of course, her personal view. I think that she has slides too.
I might be an AI, but I'm not technologically capable.
Is it on? Okay. First of all, I thank Lear and, I already skipped, and DLA for inviting me today to share with you the point of view of the authority on this topic, which is quite new also for the authority. I thank Ilan for the presentation because he gave us some information much more in detail than I will be able to. I will touch upon 2 points. The way the authority can evaluate the adoption of the use of an artificial intelligence tool for company antitrust compliance, and just give you some information about how the authority itself is starting to use artificial intelligence in its work. It is in its duties in market analysis, in detection activities, and investigation in general. Okay, let's go to the first. Ilan clearly highlighted how digitalization of business activities and communications has imposed the rethinking of the way we traditionally run some activities on both parts. From the authority standpoint, how can the adoption of an artificial intelligence tool be regarded and evaluated for antitrust compliance? Let me just make a point much more general on antitrust compliance program, the evaluation of the authority of antitrust compliance program. The authority has always been clear on a point with regard to compliance program. There is not one tool or one instrument or one program master that can be considered per se compliant and can grant the company a compliance marker, let's say. So, however, in 2018, the authority, with a view to increase, favor, enhance transparency on the enforcers' evaluation of these programs, issued guidelines, which had the final goal of promoting a competition culture among Italian firms through the adoption of antitrust compliance programs. The guidelines focus on prevention. First of all, they insist on this point. They put in place a reward system which encourage the early and spontaneous adoption of a compliance program before any infringement is detected by the company. And this is reflected in the, let's say, the maximum discounts the company can be granted at the time of any fine imposition, which will be never more than 5% in case of the adoption of a compliance program after the beginning of proceedings, and can instead reach up to 10–15% discount in case the company can demonstrate it had in place an adequate compliance program before the starting of a proceedings. And here the key word is adequate. How do we have to read the word adequate when the authority will consider a program adequate to its scope? Adequacy has to be read both in terms of the ability of the program to address the specific antitrust risk countered by the company. So each company will be exposed to different antitrust risk. We were talking about cartels, but we know other infringements are possible. And so the first issue is to define a program by starting by the correct definition of the risk countered by the company. But adequacy of the program will need also the design of an internal audit and management system to address that risk. And in this sense, once the structure of the compliance program is in place with the correct mapping of all the divisions and business areas which are more exposed to that risk, and let's say any procedure, you mentioned, Alessandro mentioned training of the key manager involved in the main process at antitrust risk, the authority considered very crucial that periodic reviews are run on that program, because the company is always facing changes in its environment, in its activities, and this is the key to grant that the program respond to changes around and in everyday business. I would say that for sure this audit activity, particularly in complex corporate realities, can benefit from the application of artificial intelligence tools that can streamline the analysis, the scanning of a huge number of communications, documents elaborated and exchanged internally within the company and with counterparts. But, and to quote Giuliano Amato, but for this activity to be effective, the specific risk areas have to be mapped and defined, and this requires human intervention. And here comes probably the point that I suppose Domenico will share with you later on. both at the time of the definition of the specifications of the tool, as you said before, and at the time of the analysis of the result gathered by the application of the AI tool, human intervention and the lawyer counseling will be probably important and key. In this respect, I believe it's key and it's important to point out that the presentation of a compliance program that incorporates an artificial intelligence tool is neutral to the authority. Companies are in the best position to evaluate what is the instrument which fits better to their specific needs. And the program will be judged adequate and effective insofar the company is able to demonstrate the program is designed to and tailored to address the specific antitrust risk the company faces. So the second, very quickly, the second issue I would like to touch upon very briefly is instead the use of artificial intelligence that the authority is starting to make itself in its duties and activities. The need to screen a significant number of documents and data in a reasonable time span, especially during inspections, as you mentioned before, has long been felt by the authority and prompted the authority to study and experiment some AI tools, which we believe can help in two respects. One, they could, of course, be an important tool for the rapid analysis of documents during down rates. But in this case, we have to be very clear. In Italy, the transition to a system of artificial scanning of documents acquired or to be selected at time of inspection, which is already the practice in other European countries for other national competition authorities, requires the prior overcoming of legal issues related to the possibility of bulk acquisition of data sets or entire drives of documents and communications to be examined later on at second stage at the authority's premises, and reasons related to the right of defense and privacy considerations have so far precluded this possibility. So at the time, we are a little behind other national authorities. On the contrary, the authority is making an extensive and increasing use of machine learning instruments and artificial intelligence tools in market analysis and investigations. For example, it ran experimental studies on the functioning of some big platform algorithms. Of course, the authority is interested in the potential sources of competition and consumer protection concerns stemming from the use of these algorithms by firms, which are making an extensive use of AI to define the key variables of their offer. The authority is fully aware that this is a delicate issue, but it's investing more and more resources in acquiring competence and know-how to understand and use itself artificial intelligence tech tools to understand the use of those tools by companies and to better define markets and market positions and understand the way these algorithms can be pro-efficient or, well, we are studying those algorithms with a view to compare pro-efficiency effects and possible concerns for in terms of illicit coordination, tacit or explicit, or any other unlawful discrimination of prices, let's say. A pilot project, for example, was conducted on the Amazon ranking algorithm, FMA, by internal IT experts and data scientists. The analysis of the algorithm confirmed the influence of the adoption of the Amazon's logistics on the probability to win the buy box. Other pilot projects may be run in the future with regard to different online platforms like Booking and Expedia ranking algorithms. For example, the question we are studying is how much do higher fees paid to the platform enhance the ranking, or are the hotels which are charging lower prices outside the platform being penalized by the ranking algorithm? What else? Yes, I already shared. To conclude, well, the authority is aware of the relevance of fully understanding the functioning of artificial intelligence used by companies. It's investing in this work to reinforce its technical skills, also through hiring. We have data scientists. We are hiring more in the near future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Paola, for your insights.
Do I have to switch it off? I don't hear you very well. No.
Having this in mind, let's hear the view of Domenico. Are we really investing institutions, or we still have a role?
Thank you so much. Many thanks, first of all, Okay, many thanks to Lear for having organized also this year this competition festival. Many thanks to Alessandro that organized this very interesting panel. And many thanks also to Paola, because the support of the competition authority with regard to the possibility to continue to have a job as lawyers is of course much appreciated. Apart this fact, in the time at my disposal, I would like to briefly highlight not only the advantages that Ilan pointed out in his presentation of the use of artificial intelligence in the compliance program, but also, we could say, the risk deriving from this use. In particular, what I think is that we have to try to answer to a couple of questions as a starting point. In my opinion, I think that we have to understand if the AI may be used actually in this moment for compliance programs and in which terms, which is, if any, the relationship between AI and lawyers, and last but not least, if in the future it's possible to imagine a compliance program entirely made by artificial intelligence. Anticipating the conclusion, I personally believe that AI is and will be, at least in the near future, a very useful tool, but necessarily linked to the traditional activity of the lawyers. Just to recap the main points probably of Ilan's presentation. I perfectly know that the application of artificial intelligence tools to antitrust compliance program may have significant benefits, among which real-time data analysis, detecting complex patterns, automation of verification, prediction of potential violations. Nonetheless, I strongly believe also, as I said, that the presence of a lawyer in antitrust compliance programs cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence for a number of reasons. First of all, understanding of the legal and regulatory context. I personally believe that lawyers have a deeper understanding than artificial intelligence, with the result that they can guarantee a more accurate interpretation of complex situations, providing a tailor-made compliance program to the client. Secondly, evaluation of ethical and moral implications. I mean, I think that is a little bit self-explanatory, but I think and I believe that artificial intelligence cannot guarantee ethic and moral, in my opinion, of course. Third point, negotiation and dispute resolution. During compliance program activities, antitrust dispute may arise. In this case, lawyers are able to negotiate agreements, to represent the company in legal proceedings, and play a key role in conflict resolution. I mean, is to grant the right of defense of the client of the company. Artificial intelligence cannot assume this role of legal representation. Some few points are related to the, I would say, personal and business relationship, the human interaction between lawyers and clients, creativity and interpretation of unique cases. We just knew that actually the tools of artificial intelligence cover only a part of the antitrust cases, for example, only cartels. And finally, another point that I consider that is very relevant is that working with lawyers, the company is covered by legal privilege that actually artificial intelligence cannot grant to the company. Further considerations. I also consider that artificial intelligence may make an error. In this sense, I think that if there are, for example, false positive or false negative, at the end the company will be obliged to ask to lawyers to review all the activities done by the tool of AI. And other point, for example, with regard to the Italian market, is also from the cost point of view. In my opinion, maybe that actually for large companies, it could be that the investment is appropriate, is fine. But probably for the Italian market, where there are a number of small and medium companies, probably is an investment that is too expensive, and could be probably better to work with lawyers that maybe are expensive but are less expensive. In conclusion, the slides that you are watching is quite peculiar, because it was a question that we addressed to ChatGPT. So the answer was exactly what you can see, and this means that actually probably also for ChatGPT our job can be useful and probably safe for at least the near future. Thank you.
So we have a hope, at least, for the near future. I don't know if you have questions. Yes, please.
So I had a question for Ilan. Thank you very much. I found it extremely interesting. I was just wondering, what is the... Thank you very much. Stefano Baldi from Linklaters. I was saying a very interesting intervention of Ilan. I have a question about the type of results that you get through the machine. Is that just a ranking of documents that have a certain percentage, or also pointing out certain pieces that are problematic, and what is the issue that is linked to that pointing out of the machine?
So the state of the art of AI at the moment is has come on leaps and bounds in the last even few months. I'm afraid it's a very boring panel. I totally agree with Domenico that we can't, that humans are not replaceable at this stage at all, which is good because I'm also a lawyer. The way the tools that are available from AI have a higher level of complexity. Without giving away our secret sauce, the way we analyze the documents is effectively, I'm going to summarize them in the four elements of the slide. So we look, there's a linguistic analysis. So you've probably heard of natural language processing, which is the ability to contextualize words. So it's not just the word itself, it's also the misspelling of the word, but also the contextual application of the word. So if I said the word Washington, that could mean many different things. It could mean the place Washington, it could mean the person George Washington, Denzel Washington, it could mean the legislative process, it can also mean a banknote. There are many different types of uses of that one word which do not show up in the traditional methodologies. But if we look at the surrounding words, as humans, we can contextualize that and understand what it means. So we know that we're talking about the legislature. And then other things like statute, bill, act, president, all of those things might also be relevant in that context. The other benefit of that is the ability to use a multi-language model. So you've heard of large language models. So this is the technology that goes into the large language models, the natural language processing and the word to vector. But it also, the AIs that we use speak 104 languages. That doesn't mean it's translating, but it means we train it to spot an issue in French and it spots it in Vietnamese. Without any training data in Vietnamese. So the ability to spot the issue becomes a lot easier. I won't talk about the other issues in detail, but we can classify content much quicker. When we first started, we required hundreds of examples in order to classify content. With the advent of the newer levels of LLMs, we were able to do that much faster with better results, more precise results. Also, there's sentiment analysis. When you're entering into an agreement and you are behaving in a collusive way, as a human, we can spot the collusion, the hiding, or the emotional benefits, the sentiment analysis that is going into the document. Now the new tools make that possible. As humans, we can only hold 20 documents in our mind at any given time. You're very clever. You're at Linklaters, so you can probably hold 25. But the AI holds millions of documents in its mind at the whole time and can triangulate issues that teams of reviewers would miss. Also, AIs don't sleep, so we don't have to give them breaks. They don't drink coffee. Their attention doesn't wander. We don't have to give them performance management reviews. So there are benefits in using this process. The output that comes out of that is much more complex and nuanced. So there are very many different patterns along this. If you think of a combination lock, there are multiple combinations that will unlock that and demonstrate risk. Risk is then ranked. We give it a sort of percentage risk, and then we have a methodology of assessing documents at a certain level, and then we have a proprietary expiration queue to make sure that we cover the width, the depth and breadth. If anybody's done a technology-assisted review where they focused down on an area and missed the elephant in the room, we have a methodology that is designed to expand the scope of the review for as long as possible and then narrow down on the multiple issues that come out of that. I can talk in more detail, but I imagine there might be one or two more questions.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. How does it work with the legal privilege, according to you? Because the legal privilege is protecting the opinion of a lawyer, but not from intelligence or an artificial intelligence. So if you do all the work you give to your client, or even you keep it in your law firm, and the competition authority asks for the whole result, it will be, and they don't have any work to do. Just to you select the documents which have problem for them.
Yes, and Domenico raised this issue as well. It's a very interesting issue. I'm going to give you the answer from England and Wales, because privilege, as we know, varies massively between jurisdictions. In the UK, obviously the underlying documents themselves are only privileged if they contain legal advice, so the regulators have the ability to access it. In England and Wales, the output of the AI is similar to the output of a search term. That is the work product of legal counsel, and wouldn't be disclosable. And then the output of our advice, the report and what we found and whether there is a risk element to it, contains privilege, and that's where the privilege lies. I think we need to be very clear about the way you use the AI will have a big impact in relation to the application of privilege. So if, as an internal compliance team, you were to use this methodology, the output of that recorded in your system could theoretically be disclosed. If you were, especially in continental Europe, where in-house legal teams don't have access to privilege in a large number of scenarios. So this is a risk for business in the way that they use these tools within their compliance regime. For lawyers in private practice, actually, it's a massive benefit. More teams or more businesses will be able to use us because the cost of review will go down. So that sort of threshold that you need to do in order to decide whether the cost-benefit analysis of looking for this problem is worthwhile the cost of the review. As reviews get cheaper, you'll be able to do that more often, more regularly. But also, there is a benefit of keeping the output of that privilege for the purpose of dealing with risk. That said, we know that accountants regularly run these types of reviews, and they're not protected by privilege at all. So again, in the interest of the cost-benefit analysis and the real advantages of privilege, we know that there are businesses out there that have very large compliance teams running these sorts of reviews at the moment, and their feeling is if by doing it in-house we're more likely to spot the issues and deal with them than we are at risk of the privilege problems that would result from that. So again, it depends on the risk profile of the business, depends on the jurisdictions that you're working in, and the types of scenarios that you're in. But I do think, for very serious issues, the benefit of legal privilege is huge.
Thank you very much, Ilan. I think we have run out of time. So thank you for attending, and enjoy your conference.
And if you have more questions, we'll stay around or move to the hall.